Right, good morning, welcome back. Now today is the first video in this series of actually restoring something and putting it back on the bike. And as much as that may seem a little bit premature, there's a good reason for it. And that is that I've done a full service on that engine. I've done cam belts, spark plugs, all the fluids, and I want to run it up and test it, make sure everything's okay, set all the levels and all that. Then I can sign off the servicing on the engine, forget all about it, and move on to the interesting stuff in the project. And I can't run the engine up without the header pipes on, and they're in a right old state, as you can see. I've got a few brackets I want to cut off. There's a few captive bolts there that I want to get rid of because they were for the heat shields, which we're not going to use anymore. And of course, they're flaky and scabby and skanky, and they just look awful as they are. And I want to put 2 coats of VHT heat-proof paint on them, and you can't put 2 coats on without curing it in between. Well, at least that's the best way to do it anyway. A good thick wet coat over fully prepared metal, give it a couple of days to air dry, then mount them on the bike and fire them up and let that paint cook from the inside out so it's completely rock hard. Then take them off the bike again and give them another thick wet coat of VHT paint. Then dry that by air, then put that back on the bike and cure it. And that double process makes sure that what's on there is as tough as Cerakote without all the massive expense. So sleeves up, let's get them prepped. Right, first task in any job like this, take the angle grinder and cut any unwanted lugs and tinware off that we don't need, carefully. Right there, a noisy old morning, but that's great so far. Those pieces of tinware are welded to the first pipe. And I think that's just to hold them on. They're not a bash plate or anything. They're just there to hold those 6 threads that held the heat shields. And with the heat shields gone, we don't need that piece of tinware, but you can't just remove it. These are plug welded through to the pipe underneath. And they're 33 years old and they are rusty. And what I don't want to do is go grinding that off and end up making a hole in the header pipe that I can't weld up because they're all rusty and flaky and horrible. As they are, they're perfectly sound, they're strong, and they ain't leaking. I'm happy with that. And in slicing those off really carefully, I didn't slit through the pipe anywhere, didn't even touch it. So I'm happy that that tiny little piece of tin that weighs nothing is remaining behind. Happy with that. You won't even see it once they're all painted black. Other than that, with all the other bracketry lopped off and ground back, I just need to scuff all the loose stuff off, key them up nicely, and set them up for paint. Now, I read somewhere that if you're wire brushing and cleaning up old rusty parts, the iron particles that are coming off, that's the rust, being oxidized iron, if you breathe it in, even in microscopic particles, it continues to rust when it reaches your lungs inside, which are wet. So it's absolutely imperative never to breathe in dust particles from rusty iron because it's horrific for your health. So if you're ever going to do it, a respirator at least, not a paper dust mask, a respirator, and also one for your camera girl as well.
Merci.
Right, there we go, all done. That's all the rust and loose flakes rubbed off and a nice keyed surface. Now, as every single paint can says, make sure the surface to be painted is clean and free from dust and any traces of grease. Well, it's clean and free from dust, but not grease. If you remember the amount of penetrating oil I had to use to get these headers undone safely with no snap studs, there's practically half a can of it been soaked into all this area here, and you can still see it because it's kind of dark and wet looking. And the only way to get rid of that, you can either use a degreaser and then that leaves a residue, or the best way ever is burn it off with a map torch and get all of that so it's bone dry. And these are headers, they're designed to get hot, so it won't hurt them at all. Let's burn off the grease residue. Okay, all prepared, ready for paint now. The next thing is to set them up in a jig so you can get all around them 100% coating on the whole surface without them falling off your jig or needing to be turned over to paint the other side. It's a bit of an art form, but if you get it right, you can set it all up, paint them, switch the lights off and leave them to dry. Tape and secure everything down. There is no chance it can fall over mid-paint job, which can spoil your whole day. It balances on its own, and I can get all around this side, all around the inside. Nice. There'll be no paint on this surface anyway, because that's a gasket surface, and this tip on the back that's touching the axle stand, that'll be inside the exhaust, it won't show. So it's all of that is what I need. All I've got to do is just secure it down. I reckon lock wire it to the rod at the front should do it. That's it. Right there, 3 hours to get to this stage. It's how long it takes if you want to do it properly. And I'm going to be using Simonized VHT Black. Now there it is, you can check it out for yourself. It doesn't require primer because VHT paint doesn't. It protects to 800 centigrade and it's for engine blocks, exhausts, manifolds, etc. And this is the right paint for the job. This will be the first coat out of 2 overall, which in the next video we'll put on the bike. And when we put it on the bike, we'll have to cure it, which means running the engine with no exhaust other than the headers, and I'm really looking forward to that. Anyway, before we get there, we've got to paint it, so let's go.